From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is Road Signs.
Thank you for listening to Road Signs, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. In this episode, we're going to take a closer look at the development of autonomous trucks and their path to commercialization. Today, truck manufacturers and tech developers are actively testing and deploying self-driving trucks on public highways and in off-road work sites. To pave the way for commercial adoption, these companies have partnered to integrate self-driving software with purpose-built autonomous trucks at the factory level. But how will truck makers and their partners ultimately commercialize this technology in on-highway applications? And what hurdles will they need to overcome before mass production and deployment of fully autonomous trucks can truly begin? We'll set out to answer those questions in this episode. But before we get started, I'd like to remind our listeners that you can keep up with this topic and the latest industry news online at ttnews.com, or gain access to our full industry coverage by subscribing to Transport Topics. If you're not a subscriber, you can sign up at ttn.ws/ttsubscribe or text TT-subscribe to 571-622-0001. And now, to learn more about the road to commercializing autonomous trucks, I'm very excited to bring in Nils Jaeger, President of Volvo Autonomous Solutions. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tess. Great to be on the podcast.
So for any listeners who aren't already aware, Volvo Autonomous Solutions, of course, is a business unit of Volvo Group, which builds Volvo and Mack trucks in North America. And VAS is developing autonomous trucks through in-house development work and, of course, in partnership with outside technology developers as well. Nils, could you just start us here by providing an overview of VAS and all the work it's doing today in this emerging field of autonomous trucking?
Of course. Thanks for the question. Yes, Volvo Autonomous Solutions is one of the 9 business areas of the Volvo Group. We were created in 2020 with the objective to accelerate and commercialize autonomous technology. We today focus on 2 industry verticals. The one we call quarry and mining. The other one is on-highway transport solutions. For quarry and mining, here we have a different strategy than for the second segment. In quarry and mining, we are building or have built a full stack solution. That means we've built our own virtual driver for this confined segment. And then we're using that driver as we are integrating the virtual driver technology into our trucks and vehicles, which we're upfitting with sensors, etc. In this segment, we're actually already revenue generating since last year, and we are generating revenues from truly autonomous applications. So we have our first customer in Norway where we're operating 8 trucks autonomously and simultaneously. We're hauling limestone there, and we recently celebrated that we have moved 1 million trucks together. The second segment, on-highway transportation, here we focus solely on the US. We have a different strategy. We are developing the autonomy-enabled truck, and then we have partners which are developing the virtual driver technology, and it's known we're working here with Aurora and with Waabi. Then we're doing the integration of both parts together, and then Volvo Autonomous Solution is providing transport solutions to customers. So we are then the customer interface towards this or with this offer. And due to that, we have 2 main locations. We're in the US and we are also in Sweden here with our employees.
Well, thank you for that overview, and I'd like to start the conversation here with the on-highway part of the business. That's, of course, what's getting the most attention here in the U.S. market, especially recently with all the progress we've seen for on-highway autonomous trucking and all the attention it's received across the industry. You mentioned your partnerships, of course, with Aurora and Waabi, 2 of the autonomous driving system technology developers that are in this space. But of course, deploying an autonomous truck requires much more than just the software, and the sensors you put on the truck. The autonomous driving system needs to integrate with the truck. And that's what Volvo has built with the Volvo VNL autonomous model that we've seen at recent trade shows. I've been fortunate to see it in person myself a couple times. So just tell us about the development of that truck, this truck that's autonomous ready, and also give us some insights into all the development work that goes into that and all the work you do in-house versus where it makes sense to partner with some of the outside tech vendors that we mentioned.
Yeah, thanks. First, we actually distinguish between an autonomy-enabled truck and an autonomous truck. So the latter has the virtual driver already included, and the autonomy-enabled truck provides all for the integration of the virtual driver. So for the on-highway applications, we have our autonomy-enabled truck platform, and then our partners, Aurora and Varby, they provide the virtual driver. And at our New River Valley plant in Virginia, we cannot only build the autonomy-enabled truck, but we can also integrate the virtual driver technology from our partners. And when I speak about the virtual driver technology, this one relates to the compute and the sensor stack. But I also want to say that an autonomy-enabled truck, that is not an ordinary truck. It's a much smarter truck, so to say. And this truck comes with redundancy. And redundancy, what's that? So to deploy a truck safely with a virtual driver, the truck must have redundancies. We duplicate safety critical systems, which then can take over in the case a primary system would fail. Now, I think it's important to point out that we have built the autonomous VNL from the ground up for the autonomous use case. It is purpose designed, it is purpose built for autonomy. So this autonomous VNL, it comes from the factory with 8 key redundancy functions. I don't want to list all the 8, but it's redundant braking, steering, communication, etc. And that, of course, means also that a redundant truck is having many more parts and components, every several hundred more parts and components than a standard truck. And of course, to build those, we have additional suppliers which are part of that. But it's also, important to point out that our partners, Aurora and Varby, they also again have partners. So it's in essence, it's an ecosystem. I think it's known that Varby and Aurora both work with NVIDIA, but Aurora also has Continental as their industrialization partner for their driver technology. But I think it's important to point out it's an ecosystem. Partnership is senior leadership. It is crucial to understand that this is something where you need to have partners. Alone, you will not be able to pull this together.
For sure, and it is amazing all the development work from all these different companies that have come together, all the different suppliers,
Yeah,
to ensure that these trucks can operate safely. Especially once you remove a driver from the loop and you no longer have that driver as the a fallback. You
yeah.
need to have these extra redundancies. If there is a system failure, there's a backup to
Hmm.
account for that. Now, it is interesting, how the conversation around autonomous vehicle development has changed over the last several years. At this point, the vast majority of developers of this technology, at least for commercial trucks, really intend for their technology to be factory installed by OEMs like Volvo rather than retrofitted. There are still some companies, and there have been companies that are looking at use cases for upfitting or retrofitting the technology on existing trucks. But at Volvo, you're really doing this at the factory level, and you are in the majority here. Why does Volvo believe it's best to install this technology at the factory level?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think at the end of the day, if you do retrofitting, it's always a sort of a compromise, and I don't think it's the best and the most superior way to do it. If you have retrofitting, then I think at the end of the day you're compromising on functionality, which can impact then of course also safety, and that's of course not in the interest of anyone. Besides, I don't think it's really an economical way to bring that technology to market. I would also argue that the ones which are following the path of retrofitting are probably ultimately still looking for an OEM partnership that they are able to have the technology factory installed. Now, in the Volvo case, what we've said is we're building an autonomous truck platform. So it's not just a truck, but it's a platform. So we are able, or our ambition is, and our ability is that we can bring this technology, this redundancy platform, not only to the Volvo truck brand, we can also bring it to Mack trucks, we can also bring it here and into our European Volvo trucks and to our Renault trucks. And by that, of course, we can enable much broader usage of this truck platform. But it also means that we can scale across different geographies, we can scale across different use cases. And what we've also done is, as we have built this as a platform, is that we have defined certain interfaces, which then make it easier also for other virtual driver companies to bring their technology onto our vehicle and truck platform.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because, as we've already mentioned, Volvo is not partnering with one autonomous driving system supplier. There are two that are publicly announced with Aurora and Wabi. So this could lead, of course, to Volvo eventually offering its customers two different virtual driver options and perhaps more over time. So it's not just one option in the marketplace. Could you just tell us a little bit more about Volvo's strategy? In that the decision making behind that. Is the goal here to provide some choice to the market, and because not all of these virtual drivers will be the same, right?
Yeah, of course. I want to point out it's two partners, but we also have our own development. So in essence, it's three virtual drivers which can operate on the truck. But if we think about the partners we have with our Aurora and Barbie, both of them have one objective. They want to provide autonomous driving in a safe and scalable way. They tackle the technology in different forms. But for us, we see that the addressable market is exceptional large. And we believe there can be autonomous lanes, which one partner aims to address with us now, while the other one prefers another lane first. And in essence, we can then provide an attractive network of lanes to the customers, which of course helps us in our way to exploit that opportunity. Important, however, is for us always that we want to be close to our customers, and we want to work really with them together to develop that technology and to provide them with autonomous transport solutions which fit their needs.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that insight into how you're thinking about this, and I think it'd be helpful now to talk about the here and the now. Right,
Yeah.
Volvo is involved in autonomous truck pilots today, including your work with DHL in Texas.
Mhm.
So I'd love for you to give us a quick status update here on the testing that's happening right now in the U.S. on public highways.
Yeah, absolutely. So we currently operate around 4 terminals. We do that in collaboration with Aurora. 2 of the terminals are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. One is in Houston, one is in El Paso. El Paso, of course, critical logistics hubs near the Mexican
Mhm.
border. All these these terminals are placed near highways and customer locations. So the terminals allow manual drayage to handle the first and the last mile, and then autonomous trucks operate continuously on the middle mile, which is highway segments between terminals. That then allows us to have maximize. By that we can maximize uptime, but we can also minimize operational risk. Now, most of our trucks today operate between Dallas, Houston. So if you're on that road, you can spot them. But if you think about Texas, you actually realize that all of the key players are operating in Texas at the moment. It's an important state for trucking. I know Texas moves more freight than any other state in the U.S. It's strategically located in a good location, of course, but then also, from a climate point of view, it's interesting. You have a very stable weather pattern, which helps us in the deployment of the technology. And then Texas, as everyone knows, connects the country's major ports, but also the economic centers.
Yeah, it really has become the incubation zone for autonomous trucking. You know,
Yeah, you can say so. Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. The incubation zone. Yeah.
And I'd say that I think it's also important to note that at today's state of testing, there is still, of course, a person in the vehicle when you're on public highways, right? Behind the wheel, overseeing the operation of the vehicle. The goal, though, of course, is to get to the point where the vehicle is operating, nobody in the vehicle uh, on the highway, right? Just clarify that.
Yeah, correct. Of course, objective is to be driverless, so to remove the safety driver, and that's of course a major step for us. But it is, in essence, for us, the last big step we have to take in order to start with autonomous transportation. we know exactly what to do together with our partner Aurora, and at a certain stage, then also, of course, with Vabi. Yeah, it's really exciting times. But as always, when you're at a certain period ahead of product launch, it's really intense, and that's what we're feeling right now.
Yes, I'm sure. I can only imagine. But uh, at this point, I've been covering this technology for uh, quite a few years now, and I've seen how far it's come. Specific to commercial trucking, but when you see the trucks out on the road now, we also see what's happening in the passenger car market. Companies like Waymo operating fully autonomously in multiple cities. Today, it feels like autonomous trucking is really no longer a question of if, but of when.
Yeah.
I know this is a question you get a lot, probably the most common question you get, but I would love to talk about the timing of commercial rollouts for the technology. I know that's very hard to pin down, and there's so many variables, but is there any guidance you can give us on when you envision Volvo Autonomous Solutions offering autonomous trucks to your customers commercially?
Yes, as I said earlier, we launched already 2023 in quarry and mining with
Yes,
our customer Brunner Kalk. But I kind of have the assumption that you wanted to know more when we are launching in the US. And
correct.
yeah, absolutely. And of course, we get this question quite a lot. We don't provide timelines. This industry is known to communicate targets and maybe not necessarily always meeting them, particularly when it comes to timelines. So I don't want to fall in the same trap. But I can tell you is that we're maybe not counting in weeks, but it's also not that we're counting here in multiple years. Something like that is that we're significantly beyond. I would argue this way. We're having launch customers, or we're having partnerships in place where we're testing with which is DHL, which is Uber Freight, and of course, we would only operate with those customers if we have a clear date in mind and if we have also the ability to do that. So it is happening in the foreseeable future. That's yeah, all I'm willing to
No,
share.
that is perfectly fine, and I totally understand. Not to put a date and a time at 12 noon on this date will be the day. Of course, there's so many variables, but coming soon, I think, is the takeaway
Mm.
here. Uh, Now, you mentioned a couple companies you're working with. As you project forward, who do you expect to be some of the early adopters of autonomous trucks? I mean, will it be some of the largest trucking fleets and logistics businesses? Might we see some smaller companies get involved as well? And are there certain types of routes or certain types of freight that you believe are best suited to autonomy in this on-highway use case?
Yeah, I mean, on the one side, I think there is some geographical focus one needs to have in mind. I mean, it will start in Texas and then it will go, east and west. But the geographical focus is Sun Belt, so that's something one has to have in mind. I think autonomy really shows its benefits when you go long distance. So that's important to remember. So particularly when you are operating on a lane which today you cannot operate with one human driver, where you need to either have a doer or you have to take breaks. Then of course the value becomes most visible. So when it comes to the type of freight, I think that will be rather open, and I don't see necessarily a lot of limitations coming that way. But yeah, I think it's something we recognize, or we have interest from all kind of segments, and we don't necessarily see that limited to certain customer groups, etc. Of course, we work with DHL, Uber Freight, and also others. But again, let's have in mind geographical focus at the beginning will be Texas, and then it will remain, I think, for quite some time actually in the Sun Belt.
Yeah. Yes, and as you've pointed out earlier, there is a lot of freight, certainly in Texas, and then stretching
Yeah.
across the southern portion of the U.S.
But
Uh,
I think I can actually say that I believe it is important that we have these early adopters, in the sense of that they're already operating with us today. I think they really play an important role, because together, we were able to accelerate the deployment, but also the acceptance of the technology. Together, it helps us to validate safety, but also operational performance. And it's also important that we are able to integrate the autonomous transport flow into the existing flows of our customers, because only then you can really increase the freight capacity, and only then you can see the benefits from an optimized supply chain.
Yeah, and getting back to the state of development, of course, one of the big milestones recently was Aurora conducted driver
Mm.
out freight
Mhm.
operations briefly in Texas. Now they have returned to having a human observer behind the wheel, but that's there have been a few cases where we have seen uh, fully driver out freight operations. You know, at least on a temporary basis. So we see that this is getting very close. We've seen the progress. Between now and that future date, again, coming soon when this is commercially available,
Yeah.
what hurdles does the industry still need to overcome to reach that point where you can really commercialize the technology at scale?
Yeah, great question. But maybe first, Aurora, since May, I think they've demonstrated that their virtual driver is really advanced, and they can not only state, but they also, have shown that, and they've demonstrated that they're ready for deployment, and that they're able to operate their system on the road. But the virtual driver is one of two main ingredients. The other one is the autonomy enabled truck, which I mentioned earlier. And of course, you need more to scale. But if we just focus on the two now, on the virtual driver and the vehicle, and to see autonomous transport solutions rolling out, both parts need to be in sync. And the respective integration of those two parts is, of course, significant and very important. And for Volvo, for us as an OEM, the ability to industrialize and to scale, that is of very high importance. It's a priority for us, and we believe, that the industry, we've seen enough demonstration, proof points, proof of concept, you name it. But if we have the safe technology in place now, and as we have regulation in place which allows us to operate, as we're achieving also society buy-in, then it is really about the ability to industrialize and to scale. And we're addressing that as we will produce the autonomous VNL in our most modern plant we have. That plant is in Virginia, New River Valley. New River Valley. We invested in recent years more than 400 million US dollars into that. And of course, we want to utilize our industrial capabilities to be able to leverage that opportunity. And I think that's really important. Autonomy at scale requires that OEMs can build the autonomy-enabled truck, and in the case of Volvo, then also we can integrate the driver technology from our partners.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that overview. And I know we've focused most of this conversation on highway autonomy, right? That's what's most relevant and interesting to our listeners and our readers at Transport Topics. But of course, there's also a lot of opportunity for automation at industrial sites, at private locations,
Yeah.
private sites, work sites.
Mm.
Uh, Earlier, you mentioned Volvo's autonomous trucks that are hauling limestone at a quarry in Norway, up to 1 million tons. So this involves some pretty complex work, right? I mean, there's steep tunnels to navigate, difficult terrain, of course, in a quarry, harsh weather conditions. Uh, Tell us a bit more about those operations so far, and do you continue to see promise in off-road and industrial site automation in those types of environments as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we have a dedicated organization for what we call confined. So confined is, off-road in the sense of quarry and mining application, but it can also include industrial site automation like ports, etc. And if we think about quarries, but if we think about mining applications, then actually you have an environment which is still a hazardous environment. You still have a lot of accidents. You have fatalities there. And in that environment, to replace the human being, to remove the human being out of that environment, that is, of course, a big value. So safety is actually in the forefront there. And then quite often you have those locations in remote locations where it is difficult to find actually skilled labor, employees which can do the job for you. And scarcity of labor is then, of course, another advantage which you bring there. besides all the efficiency gains you can have for an autonomous transport system. So we have implemented our first site in Norway. We're at the moment implementing a second site here, also in the Nordics, and we see more opportunities for us in Europe. But of course, we're also looking ahead, and we're looking at other geographies when it comes to mining. Of course, Australia comes to mind, so that is also on our radar screen, and we will get there also. When it comes to other applications like ports, airports, etc., that is something we have looked at carefully in the past, and we are building, our own virtual driver stack and our hardware stack in a way that we can also bring that to industrial sites, and that is clearly also in sight for us. At the moment, however, I want to be clear, we focus a bit more on quarry and mining and on-highway transport solutions. For me, it's important in this space of autonomous that you have focus, and that you also stay focused. I think, in our industry, we've seen a lot of announcements, and not always everything had been delivered. So for us, it's important that we stick to what we've defined as what we want to do, and where we want to progress. Once we have done that, I call it, once we've earned the right to grow, we can also go back and look at other applications. But at the moment, we focus on those two industry verticals mostly.
Okay, great. Well, it's been fascinating to watch for sure, and it'll be fascinating to see where else this technology could be applied in the future. Now, whenever we discuss autonomous trucking, I think it's always important to address questions about how it might affect the industry's workforce. That question does come up a lot. It's been my longstanding view, having covered the space for, maybe not quite a decade, but pretty close to a decade actually, that this technology will complement drivers, not replace them. At least for the foreseeable future. That being said, your view on this counts a lot more than mine, Niels. So I'd love to hear what you think. What do you think autonomous trucking really means for professional drivers in the future?
I actually share your view, and I believe that autonomous trucking, that will be a gradual introduction. It will be complementary. It will not replace. It will rather fill the gap. There's a shortage today of truck drivers. On the other side, we also need to be clear that freight demand is increasing, is actually forecasted to increase significantly. It's driven by population growth. You have urbanization. You have mass customization. You have continued increase of online purchasing, and that really drives a big demand of transportation. So for me, it's not about having a competition here. This is, for me, autonomous transport solution that becomes a necessity. It's absolutely a must in order to keep our economy alive and kicking.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Again, I always think that's an important part of the conversation, so I'm glad we were able to include it here. I see we're close to time here, but before we wrap up, I'd love to just open it up here to any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go.
Yeah, thanks, Des. One more time, we at Volvo Autonomous Solution, we believe it's important to state that autonomous driving is not about replacing a human behind the steering wheel with a virtual driver. We believe we provide a new and a complementary transport system, which then will compete with existing transport system. But it's new, it's different, and it's not just about cost saving. It's about creating new and different value. In my mind, freight can move then without interruption. Freight is expedited. Freight becomes more predictable. Freight hauling becomes more sustainable. And to bring the value of autonomy to the surface, we will work very close with our customers to then build together the autonomous transport solution which fits them. Because we want our customers to benefit from the value of autonomy without necessarily having the hassle of operating it. And by this, then, we're sure we will actually serve the adoption of the technology.
Well, hey, that's a great way to end the conversation. I really appreciate the time here. Again, thank you, Niels, for joining the podcast and sharing your insights. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Les. It was great fun to be here.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our original questions. How will truck makers and their technology partners ultimately commercialize autonomous trucks? And what hurdles will they need to overcome before mass production and deployment can truly begin? As we've discussed during this episode, The development of autonomous truck technology involves multiple stakeholders, from truck manufacturers and tech developers to fleets and shippers involved in pilot programs that are paving the way for large-scale deployment. We've seen a great deal of slow but steady progress over the years, but this is both a technical challenge and a business challenge, and above all, safety is imperative in this field and a prerequisite for success. Over time, as truck makers and developers continue to prove the safety of this technology and integrate it into real-world freight operations, the ongoing testing and pilot programs that we see today will evolve into full commercialization. If you've enjoyed this episode of Road Science, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with me and the Road Science team. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. Finally, I'd like to remind our listeners once again that you can keep up with this topic and the latest industry news online at ttnews.com. And of course, we'll be back soon with a fresh episode of Road Science. Until then, I'm Seth Clevenger. Thank you for listening.